we have storms kind of everywhere. So, you know, I noticed a couple of you broke up and then you were fine. But, you know, there's a severe storm warning here and we're fine. But along the East Coast, it's a little dicey in some places. So if we break up a little bit, I think that's probably why, because this one did so much better than the other system. But, okay, looking at motifs, like you guys all played with the motifs and, you know, you had fun playing with those and, you know, they're just enjoyable to make lines or to use individually. And, you know, they're just kind of fun things to play with. And I'm just looking at my screen. I'm still not really quite used to the screen just yet. But there are other things that you can do with the motifs as well. I'm going to close this down so I have a little more room on my desktop. So, you know, you've gone through, you know, playing with the motifs a little bit. I'm just looking to see. There we are. And, you know, you've probably gone in and looked at the blackwork motifs as well. And some of these are really quite stunning. You know, like this one is a large motif. And, you know, so, and you can always change the color, but what's nice about the motifs, of course, is that you can always also resize them and it'll adjust the stitch count for you. And so, but there's something else about the motifs, and that is that you can make your own motifs. And they can be multiple color, they can be one color. We're going to start off with just maybe some one color, a very simple kind of motif. I'm going to go ahead and just use one of the manual punching tools, and there's a circle. And I'm just going to pick the satin fill. And, you know, that's the little zigzag stitch up there, okay? When I do a circle in this program, you know, it just automatically sizes, you know, and if you notice from where I put my mouse, it just kind of sizes evenly out. So there's my little circle, and it's a satin circle. And when you go to select the little hand, you know, you'll see, I'm going to zoom in on this, which I can use my scroll wheel to zoom in on. See this little square right here? When you're in just the select mode, the normal mode with the black boxes, that square indicates where the last stitch is placed in your design. And why it's important to note these things is when you're making a motif, you want to control where things start and where things end so that you don't have a lot of jump stitches in the motif, right? So I'm going to go over to, you know, our reshape, which is, you know, with the little nodes, right? And this is my end point. See that little green? That's my end point. And you notice as soon as I moved it, that changed around quite a bit, right? So this is my end point. If I want to put my end point here, and my out point is this square, see, or the little plus symbol, see where it's at? And I can't move that if I use those predetermined shapes. I just can't move it. So it's kind of where it is. And I can sit here and I can play with this to try to get that perfect, right? But ultimately, I can't move this point if I've used just a normal shape. And these little nodes allow me to reshape this, okay? But it still won't let me move that point. So you can use the circle, but know that you're going to have that little bobble in between here on any motif that you make, right? Or you can use another tool and you can practice this. And because we're making it in the program, we have the advantage of resizing it. So I'm going to just get rid of what I've made right here, okay, using this little automatic circle tool, right? And before I do that, you notice how it looks like kind of off oval shaped here?
Yeah.
It doesn't really look like a circle. Let me tell you why. I'm going to go out of my little visualizer view here. It looks more like a circle now, but if you notice, see the outline around this? See that black outline?
Yes.
Okay, that is the actual shape that you created using this little circle tool. These extensions beyond that outline in the direction that this is going to stitch is your pull compensation. So when you turn on the visualizer, the program is showing you, see the black outline still? It's showing you compensation. So when you look at it from like a normal point of view, it doesn't look round. It looks kind of ovalish, and that's because of the compensation, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and delete this now, and I'm going to use another tool. And that tool is going to be my parallel weave fill. And if you click on that little black, little kind of triangle, it pops open that little menu, and you get to pick what kind of stitch you want. And I want a satin fill. Now, this program allows you to right-click for a curve and left-click for a straight segment. So if I want to make a circle, first I'm going to use my grid. See how my grid is right in the middle here? And I'm going to right-click on this, move over, and make sure you go the same amount, the same amount of squares over. And, you can right-click on that as well. And then come down here and right-click here and right-click here. And since we're making a circle, if you hit enter, watch what happens. I've right-clicked all the way around, okay? I get a perfect circle, right? Now, with that being said, if I did something like left-clicked at the start and then came over here and right-clicked, then I right-click here, okay? So I've got 3 right-clicks here and a left-click where I started. Now, if I just hit enter here, oh, wow, I'm surprised they've done some improvements, because usually I would get a straight segment because that first click was a left click. But on this, it went ahead and noted that it was a left or a right click, if that makes sense to you guys. What would happen before is this would have been straight between here and here. So the new program actually has adjusted that. So if you want to make a perfect circle where you have complete control, use the little parallel satin fill tool here and just use this grid, because it doesn't matter how big I make this, right? I can always shrink it down to the size that I need, see? And if I only want it to be like that big, I can shrink it down with no problem, and I still have my compensation. But why that's important is this. When I go to reshape, I have complete control over moving these things. Here's my angle, right? And I'm going to zoom in on that. Here's my out sign. Sometimes you have to kind of zoom in to find it. See that little cross? That's my out point. So I can move that out point over here. Here's my in point, right? And, I'm going to put it on the outlines. And I'm going to change the color of this so you can see this a little better. There we go. Okay, see that plus symbol right there?
Yes.
Everybody see that?
Yes. Can you hear me burning?
Uh-huh. Is that Miss Nancy?
Yes, baby.
You made it. Okay, so there's your out point, right?
Yes.
And why this is important is that, let me zoom back out now since I zoomed in like 8 bazillion, times. If I want to make a running line of these instead of just one motif, right? That means I know that they start sewing here and they end sewing here. So when I make a motif, they'll just align properly, right? So everybody follow me so far? We've got this little circle, and then we remade a circle using this little turning fill tool up here, the parallel fill tool.
Yes.
So that we could control our in and out points, right?
Yes. Is
okay,
this
now?
Is this the new program?
This is the new program. Did you get your upgrade yet?
No, I don't know how to do it. Where do you go to get the upgrade?
It's a charged upgrade.
Like how much is it?
I don't know. You bought your program off of Ken's, right?
Yes.
So I would call Kevin and ask him what the upgrade costs. And, just tell him you're one of my webinar people.
I think it's $350.
Is it really that much?
I think so.
I think she's right because I looked into that a little bit, or it may even be more like 400.
I would call and check and see, but the differences are this supposedly automatically splits things, and I haven't played with it too much because I've been on the road. But when we get to like those big designs, we'll see if it splits, right?
Are you in California?
No, I'm back home now.
Well, our weather has been dreadful. Well, go ahead.
No,
I
missed the weather on my way home, but okay, so everybody's following me so far on how we did this, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so now in order to turn this little bead into a motif, I have to click on it and make sure it's selected, right? Then I'm going to go up to the menu and I'm going to say embroidery and make motif. Okay, so I'm making a motif. Where do I want to save it? You know what? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a new folder and okay, and just name it new motifs. You can name it whatever you want. Okay. So there's new motifs. My motif name, I'm going to name it .1. Okay. Remove functions. Remove functions is going to take out like compensation and different things, right? I did tell you guys, I did forget to tell you this. I'm going to cancel this. I did forget to tell you one thing. Go up to your object properties and do this on your own. You want to leave your compensation. Leave that alone. Make sure there's no underlay, okay? Because you're not going to stitch this big. You don't need underlay. You don't need any additional stitches. Now, we've got this selected. I'm going to go up to embroidery, make motif, make a new folder, which was called new motifs, and this is going to be .1, okay? Remove the functions. I'm going to go ahead and click that and say okay. Now, if you look down in the corner, can you guys see down in the corner? Let me draw a little down here in this corner, okay? Watch that corner because it's going to give you little references. And I've now turned this off since I clicked out of it, so I'm going to go back into this now. Oh, I guess I'm still kind of in it. Okay, what it told me down here was to put my first reference point. And what that means is, where do I want this to kind of start? What direction? I want it to go here, and I want it to stitch in. See where my line is?
Mm-hmm.
I want to stitch it straight across. So I'm going to kind of try to stay in the motif and stay straight. Like that. It says .1 has been created. It's not created unless you get this message and you place that reference point. Okay? And I'm going to zoom in so you guys can kind of see, and we'll redo this dot real quick. Okay, I've got it selected. I'm going to go up to embroidery and make motif, and I've already made this new folder. So we'll just call this one .2. All right, now what it tells me, look down in that corner, in that left-hand corner, it says digitize first reference point. You know when you click and it, you know, places that first anchor point when you click and you bring in a gallery motif? You know what I'm talking about when you click and it's still that wireframe?
Yes.
Okay, that is what it's talking about. So I'm going to say right here, there's my first reference point. It gives me this line. I could make it go like this, and that would determine how it aligned with the other motifs. But because I control those in and out points, I'm going to go ahead and say straight across. And look at the bottom corner of the screen. It says digitize second reference point. So I digitized the second reference point, and as soon as I do that, it says .2 has been created. Okay, so now what we have created is this. Moving back out, I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to make a line. So here's my line. And I'm going to go ahead and go to select and say, you know, I think I want this to be a motif line. And here's my new motif, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here's my size, you know, the spacing, see how it's running together? Okay, that's dot 2, there's dot 1. It's going to do the same thing. It's running together because there's compensation, so it looks like it's on top of each other. I could space this out a little bit, see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say, okay. See how that's spaced out now? And there's the dot that I created. When I removed the functions, it didn't keep that color function either. It just went to the default color. So there is my dot. I can now use this dot for a line, a fill, you know, whatever I want to use it for. It's now in the motif, right? And let's select what gallery we want to use, and there's my new motif, right? Dot 2, say okay, and, you know, we can resize this because we took out the underlay. Spacing, let's make this 7 and 7. And say okay. See? So I can use this for fills. You know, I wouldn't want to space it necessarily quite like that, but, you know, that's not too bad if you wanted polka dots on something, right? And then if I go to my gallery now, I can go in here and I can say, okay, I'm going to select this dot, and I can use the motif I created. See those 2 points I was talking about?
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been able to make my own motif that does everything now. I can select it in the gallery. In the older versions, you can't select it in the gallery. You can only use it in here, you know, in the lines or the fills. So, you know, that's some of the things you can do with the motif, right? But that's creating your own motif. So if you find something you really, really like, you know, group it together and create a motif. Me try it this way. If I say, you know, I really like this, and I'm going to make this little run, right? Let me get rid of this last one. And I've decided that this run should now be a little bit bigger, right? And I'm going to zoom in just so I can line these up. And because, you know, because each one of these individual motifs can be moved, we can do it this way. And I'm going to make this one blue. And we'll move that one over and this one over. Actually, I could just get away with 2 of them, so I'll get rid of these 2. So I have, you know, red and blue. Let's make this one green and blue. And I want to line these up a little better. So there we go. So now, you know, we've created something from the gallery, but it's still something a little different than what's already in there, right? So I select it. I left click and hold and drag a square around it. See my square?
Mm-hmm.
Select everything. And then when I go up to embroidery, make motif, you know, I'm going to put it in the new motif, and I'll just name this one combo. Okay, and I'm not going to remove my functions this time. I'm going to go ahead and say okay. And it says, where's your reference point? Okay, first reference point. I'm going to put the first reference point right here. And I'm going to move my second reference point way out here because I want you to see what these reference points do. Okay, so now my combo has been created, right? So if I make a line, and go to select and then go into my properties and say motif line, right? There's my, you know, new motifs, right? There's combo. It took out the color. And we'll go ahead and say okay. And when I put it back in it, you know, when I say okay, the color shows up because we didn't remove functions. But if you look, because of where I put those reference points, see the spacing here?
Right.
That's what those reference points control. And on that dot, I put them right on the edge of the dot, right? So if I go like this, And just so you can tell, like, the difference between them, we'll change this to pink, and we'll make this one aqua. How's that? So now I can go like this, and I can say, you know, make motif, and combo 2.
I wish you
Yeah.
lived next door.
Well, you know, I'm going to come hound you in North Carolina one of these days. You're going to be shocked. So here's my first reference point, right? Now, if I put my second reference point close to this, right,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get a whole different, you know, look to this. And let's go select combo 2. There we go. And see it's right on top of each other. I might have to make some adjustments because it's hard to tell. But I look at this, it's okay, my first point was there, and my other point was over here. You know, maybe I got it a little bit close here. And, you know, but that gives you an idea of what's going on, right? Now, one advantage I have with this is once I make a motif line like this, if I have something that needs adjusted, I simply go to my reshape, select that, and this behaves, see these little diamonds right here? This behaves like lettering. I can move this over and I can align these so that they do what I want them to do. Okay? This lets me change the angle and stretch that out. And, you know, once I stretch that out, of course, you know, they move again, right? This lets me resize, and it really behaves like lettering. See? So, you know, if I resize or reshape, that's where these little nodes are going to come in handy. And this can let me scale it, you know, individually. See that I have this one selected? So when I do, I have those controls, just like with lettering. So I can do some really neat things with motifs as well, and including adjust them as needed. Like even down here, I could come down here and select this line and see the diamond. I could actually drag this over here and say, oops, you know, didn't mean to do it that way. And there you go, right? So, you know, depending on how long you've made the line and how you space these motifs is going to determine how they automatically are created. Okay, now, we've made this 2-color motif, and if I go into my gallery now, I can go over and I can select the combo 2, and I have, you know, the same controls that I had before. And my colors show up because we didn't, you know, remove functions. They always show up in the gallery, but not always in the fills of the lines. Do you guys have any questions on that so far?
Yes. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Is it possible then to go in at motif and adjust your first and second points so that you wouldn't have to adjust on every line or every border that you drew?
You can, like on this, part of the reason why this one didn't line up correctly is the length of the line.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so like when I made this motif, I'm going to zoom in, right? When I made this motif, you can see, you know, they're lined up pretty good here, right? I might tweak it a little bit. Okay, but when I made this motif, what happens is, let me go ahead and we'll zoom in and do this. And when you do this, you might want to zoom in. I'm going to call this combo 3. Okay. You'll want to be careful about where you put this. Like I put this all the way over here. I might want to go, if I want these to line up just, you know, better, I might want to go here. And then when I make that second point, go dead center here.
Uh-huh.
So dead center on both ends.
Yeah, on something that I didn't create, because I don't have any control where the in and out points were made on this.
Okay.
I didn't make this one. I just combined it, right? So I don't always have control over where these end up, right? So let me kind of get rid of this, and let's make a new line. And a lot of times, like if I'm making a line, sometimes it's going to depend on the line too, like the length of the line, right? But I think since we, kind of put those dead center, we might line up a little bit better. A little bit, see? We're still a little bit off, but that, I believe, has to do with the length of the line. Because if I select the line and go into the edit mode, right, and I shrink that line just a little bit, see how they start lining up?
Mm-hmm.
So, with the motifs, because, the line, it's like lettering. When you make lettering and you make the line X big, the lettering kind of, either spreads out sometimes or stretches out, or you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like that. That's, which makes it on a motif for a line, makes it a little bit harder to make them just perfect. I wouldn't pull my hair out making them just perfect. Close enough is good, because you can always move them when you make a line. The fill, if you get close on the fill, you're generally pretty good.
But you once you make a motif, you create a motif, then if you want to adjust it, there's really no way to go back in and edit that motif. You can go in and edit, but then you would create new motifs.
Right, you can save over top of it.
Oh, you can use the same name. Got it. Yeah, okay, yes. Uh-huh.
Right, yeah, so you can just save over top of it. Like, for example, if I wanted to grab this, right, go to embroidery and, because it's a line, it won't let me do it. Let me grab just one of these real quick. Okay, so there's combo 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's combo 3. And if I want to take this, and maybe I want to make it all red. Well, let's change this to, I have to ungroup it, that's why. Okay. Okay, maybe I want to make those all purple. Let me zoom in. I must have missed those lines. Purple, right? Okay, so I can now take this and say, embroidery, make motif, let's see, I called it combo 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it'll say, okay, and it says that already exists, and I can say, yeah, just right over top of it. So now, when I say, okay, make a line with combo 3, and I, like even this line, when I say, okay, combo 3 now, it's going to make some changes. Well, I guess it's not going to let me do that because of the change, but we'll do this. Combo 2, okay, and then come back in and change it back to combo 3. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can do it that way. You can go into your, we lost somebody, I think. Oh, we lost the other Nancy. So when you can kind of, oh, that's right. I forgot. She said she had a meeting tonight. That's right. So when you go into, change them, you can save over top of them, or you can kind of go in and you can delete them out of your folders.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but, most of the time I just save over top of them.
Okay.
There's, even like in the embroidery gallery, like there's not a lot you can do, like once you pick this, right? By the way, if you want to see what they really look like, you can hit this True View button now, and it does show you what they look like. So that gives you an idea, especially like in the embroidery gallery, which ones are satins and which ones are not. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So just so you know, I didn't know if you guys had played with that or not. On this, even if I come in here, like I can't even right click, like I don't have a lot of functions to.
Now, is 009 the one you just did?
Yep, 009 is the one I just did. See, even on the ones I make, You know, even on, which is kind of neat because before it was just an outline, right? But even on the ones I make, there they are. I can see them in like a 3D preview.
Bernie, I don't know why in the devil you don't live next door.
Well, you know, North Carolina gets really hot in the summer. You know, I used to live there.
I know it. Well, go ahead. I'm not going to talk to you.
Well, okay. You guys have any questions?
I have a couple of questions about, there were two terms that you used, I'm sure all the ladies are familiar with, but one was black work, and the other term was pull compensation. If you could just give me a brief.
All right, the black work is easy. Black work is a stitch type. And, you know, these are not necessarily, like this would be a true blue black work. See how the stitches are basically one stitch, right? And this is metered out and the stitches are all even. But black work is actually like Elizabethan black work. It came from Spain, and it's a style of stitching. So if you had like these are huge black work designs. These would not be appropriate for a fill. See how huge these are?
I understand.
But they're very decorative, right? But there's some other ones that you can use, excuse me, to create black work fill. And those are going to be more along the lines of these smaller pieces. Like you could use that for a black work fill or this. And, you know, it's just kind of a style of stitching that fills things in.
Okay.
And that would be, you know, black work fill.
Yeah,
you know,
for a border or something would be pretty.
Right, a border, a fill, like a small area. But if you ever, you know, Elizabeth, Queen Elizabeth, she had
not
a
personally,
lot of,
but
well, that's true. But you know, when you see a portrait of her and it's got all that intricate stitching on the white garments, and that's black work, which, you know, it's just very intricate. The Renaissance people do a lot of black work designs on their costuming.
Can't you line those two up? You've got three different patterns there, or three of the same patterns.
Yeah, two patterns actually. This is one pattern for black work.
Yes, and if you line those up so that it's like up and down.
Yeah, you could flip those over.
No, I'm not. I mean, doing one and then lining it up with the other one and doing like a run.
Yeah, you could do them in a line, or you could, you know, like this is. I picked this for a fill because it's a smaller pattern, right? But I could have taken these and I could have flipped them around. And let me get rid of that so we center. See how that's flipped around? And you know, but it's kind of an interesting pattern. What's nice is they put a lot of the basic black work patterns into those little motifs already for you. And the other one was pull compensation. Pull compensation is, I'm going to make a big circle. Okay. When I make this big circle, go out of 3D view. Okay. And I'm going to take those little stitch points off and zoom in. Okay, see that black outline around the circle? It's very faint, but let me see if I can change this to a little. Okay, that black line is the actual area that we're making this circle, right?
Yes.
Now, pull compensation is additional stitching added to the direction that the stitching is going. You can see the direction here is, you know, I get my little marker out here. All right. The direction is this direction. That's the direction it's stitching, right?
Yes.
Okay, so pull compensation is added when I select this and I go into object properties, right? If I have, they call it stretchiness, okay? That's what it's called in this program. It's pull compensation, but I'm going to make this like a really astronomical number. So I'm going to make it 10. And what that's going to do is it's going to, see how it extended those stitches beyond that original outline. And what pull compensation's added for is this. Like, see how odd that looks? But why it's added is it assumes, and rightly so, that when you sew something and the stitches are going in one direction, that there's a slight pull, no matter how good your backing or underlay is. There's going to be a slight pull of the fabric, you know, back into the center, you know, because it's going in one direction. Like your zigzag stitch on your sewing machine, you know how it tightens up if it's too wide and you don't have backing. So when we say pull compensation or stretchiness in this program, it adds those little extra stitches so that you don't notice, like the circle will be round when it's sewn. Or if you have something that's up against another area, you won't have a gap because the thread pulled the fabric towards the center. So does that make sense?
It makes sense. I just need experience to really comprehend. But yes, that your explanation made sense to me.
Now just think of satin stitching on your sewing machine. If you make a really wide satin stitch and you don't put some backing underneath it, or it's a lighter fabric, how it sucks that fabric up.
Right.
And with embroidery, it's the same concept. So instead of allowing it to, you know, there's going to be some pull or sucking up of that fabric. So it adds extra stitches to make the shape correct, look correct when it's sewn, or to not leave gaps between areas.
And so it's entirely dependent on the fabric, or is it the fabric and the thread, and the fabric and the thread and the design? Or?
Well, no matter what you do, you know, I'm trying to think of a good, you know, you sew, correct? Not just embroidery, you sew also?
Well, some people might call it that, but yeah.
Well, you know when you put like even a running stitch in fabric, right?
Yes.
There's that little bit of pull on the seam no matter what you do.
A little gather, yes.
And that's pull compensation.
Okay.
Well, that's pull. The compensation part is adding these extra stitches.
So it stays flat.
Right, so that it looks round, like in the case of the circle, or like in the case of like if you have white eyeballs and a black, you know, black around the white eyeball part, you don't have a gap between those two sections.
Okay.
So, you guys have any questions? Miss Nancy?
No, you know I'm just looking.
Yeah, don't let her snow you, Susan. She's actually pretty good.
I'm pretty sure all these ladies are pretty good, but you know, and that's one reason I wanted to join this group.
Yeah, it's once you get to know them, you'll find that they're a little more talkative. But I joke, but I have control over the mute button.
Are we gonna have
you guys are
for homework?
Yeah, well, you're gonna play. This month is play month, so everybody gets comfortable with all the controls in the program.
Well, I have to buy this new program.
You know what? You'll like it. I mean, you know, you use Expressive. Well, you kind of use Expressive. You probably use this program more now.
I don't use either one of them. I just like to make people think I'm smart.
Listen to this.
I haven't sewn in so long. Good Lord. All right, go on, Bernie. Don't let me fool you.
All right. Well, this is play month because next month we start working on actual designs.
All right, dear.
So I just want everybody to get comfortable. Okay, now, you guys are all good on the motif, right?
Sure.
Okay, how do I make a motif?
You go into your, go ahead.
No, not use a motif, make my own motif.
Well, you could pick something from the existing motif and modify it, either color or the number or the angle, so forth, and then save it as a motif.
I can, but if I make my own motif, what are the things I have to remember?
Oh, you don't use the, what is it? You use the little thing on the top. I don't know. Don't use the circle or the
Right, don't use the circle.
pre-made shapes, because you
Right.
can't adjust your in and out.
Right, you don't have as much control over those.
So
And
you
then,
draw a circle.
Right. Oh, you missed that part. Okay, you could draw this circle, right, using the regular circle, but I don't have any control. So to make a circle, I pick the manual punch tool up here, the parallel fill, and I use this grid, and I just right-click on this grid evenly. Don't left-click, just right-click, because that gives you all those curved segments, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I can resize this. But there's something else I need to remember to take out on this.
Your functions.
No, you have to take out the fill.
I have to take, well, the underlay. Like, I'm
Yes.
going to shrink this down to very small, right?
Yes.
So the reason I take out the underlay,
Is so it won't pucker.
well, so it won't be too heavy on the stitching.
Right.
So, you know, and I don't generally, unless I'm making a large motif, I don't need underlay. And that's going to be, the way you get to that is when this is selected, you can double click and it'll open. And you can come in here and say remove the underlay.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can select it and you can come up here and use this little checklist. That's your underlay or object details. That's where you're going to get to the underlay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then once I do that, I want to control what points and how do I control those points?
You find your 2 points.
Okay, but how do I make those 2 points show up?
You
Oh, your object, the little art thing on the, yes,
There you go.
right there.
The reshape.
The reshape.
Okay, now, what am I looking for? And I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to change this color just so you can see it because that's really hard. Okay, what does the green thing do, that little green square? What is this?
The in.
That's where I start.
Mm-hmm.
What's this?
that's where you end.
Yep, that's my out point. Okay? So,
Mhm.
okay, so now I've got that all taken care of. And see this little angle fill? I could
Mhm.
control those in and out points and still make it stitch in any direction I want. When you get that little icon, when you mouse over something, it's telling you that's your angle.
Are we going to get a copy of this?
You will. You'll get a link. And the new website is hopefully going to be done this week before I pull my hair out. Did you guys get a chance to take a little peek at the new website?
No.
I've been on it, but I'm new, so it's I don't know the difference between the new and the old.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, the new one is mobile and iPad friendly.
Oh, it is iPad friendly?
It is iPad friendly, so you can watch that anywhere you want now.
Well,
And
do you have an app for that?
there's no app needed. You just go to our website.
I love you, Bernie.
Is it going to be the same website or is it going to be a different one?
It's going to be a different one. But before I show you the website, it's the same address. But okay, so you guys know that this little angle kind of controls that, right?
Yes.
Okay, so now if I want to make the motif, what do I do next?
You have to do your in and out points.
We got the in and out point. So how do I actually make this into a motif?
You go to
Embroidery,
and go to motif.
make
Yep.
motif.
Okay, now what do I want to do? You know, here's my folder. You can make any folder you want. Like if you're going to use this for a specific project, name it so you know where it's at, right?
You want to say new.
And I'm going to just call this one .1. Okay, so I gave, there's my new folder if I want to make a new folder, or I can select any of the existing folders. And I gave it a name, .1.
Mm-hmm.
So now what do I do?
May I ask a question back at that other screen? Because there was that remove function here that we go up to the object details and remove our underlay from there. Is that correct?
Yeah, but sometimes there's I would, because I'm a little more cautious, I guess, I would remove the underlay.
Right.
Okay. And when it says remove functions, okay, there's color changes, there's
Oh, it's going to take everything out, not just your underlay.
right, and we'll play with that for a second just to be sure. But I'm kind of a better safe than sorry kind of girl. So I do, I make sure that I remove that underlay and I kind of control what's going on. But we'll play with that in a second. So okay, this is going to be .1, and okay, so after I name it and I say okay, what do I have to do next?
Digitize your first reference point.
Right, and where should my first reference point be?
Where you want to start.
Where you want it to start, and generally that's where your end point is. Okay, so I would click, you can extend out a little bit if you want to give a little space, but, close to where that start is. And here's my line once I click that first point. Now, if I click right here, I know that they're going to be on top of each other because of the compensation, right? But if I click out here a little bit, I'll create a little jump in between those and give it some automatic spacing. Once I place that second point, my motif is now created. So there's my motif. And, okay, so we'll play with, I'm going to go ahead and grab a gallery thing. We'll use this one this time. And we'll just change the color. And because each one of these is individual, so I'll make this one blue. Okay, so now we've got these two, right? And here's what happens or should happen if I use remove functions. So if I go in here to embroidering, make motif, remove those functions. Okay?
Yeah.
And I say, okay. Now, if I go to the motif, I believe it comes in. If I just go into that gallery, you know what? I actually didn't create that. Hold on. I was just thinking, wait a minute, I forgot a couple of steps here. All right, so make motif, remove the functions, and I named it test 1. And okay, and I want to put my start point. So start point, end point, there's my motif, and we remove functions. So now, if I go in here and go into my new motif, there's test 1, and see the color functions removed.
Right.
Okay, where before when I did, the this one, the color function still remains. See?
Right. So it removes everything.
It removes the color function. Underlay, I don't know. We can test on this little dot though. So if I go in here and I say, oh, let's put some underlay. So we'll put some underlay, and we'll just make an edge run and zigzag so we can really see it. And let's go ahead and beef up our stitchiness to our stretchiness to 10, and then we'll really know if it's going to work, right? See? No doubt, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm going to say let's go ahead and let's, make this a motif, and I'll name it test dot. Okay, and let's remove our functions. Okay, so, we wanted to start here and end here. And, okay, so there is our test dot. That's what it's supposed to look like. So when I come in here and I say, let's get our test dot, right? It doesn't remove the compensation. It's just removing functions.
Okay.
And what functions are usually considered are color changes, thread trims. Those are more functions. And now we can see if it removed underlay. I'm just going to kind of get rid of a bunch of these things so we can get to it pretty quickly. But it probably doesn't consider underlay necessarily a function, but we'll see.
So you want to go in and remove the underlay when you're doing a small motif.
Right. See, it didn't actually remove the underlay. It left some of it. It left, like that running stitch around it. So that's why I said I'm usually, better safe than sorry kind of girl, because each program kind of has its own terminology sometimes, and what one program may consider a function, another one doesn't. And, you know, it kind of depends on the programmer's mindset. And so, you know, my line of thought is, okay, even though it says it's going to do X, Y, and Z, I generally make sure it does X, Y, and Z. Like if I really wanted that to be in one color, I would have removed the colors and just made it one and not worried about it. But, you know, then I know. Then there's no doubt what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I suppose I should trust the program more, but, you know, you just never know, right?
That's
and,
right.
you know, and you always, if you want something to be a certain way, then, you know, take those extra steps and control that a little more. So you guys are going to play with making more motifs, right? Now you know how to make your own motifs. You could even do it with letters if you wanted to. And
if you will, just please send me so I can copy this.
I will send you the video link. Okay, here's my letter A, right?
Mm-hmm.
And technically, I can't make it a motif as a letter. I just can't, right? It says, no, it's got a letter function to it, just like I couldn't make a line a motif. But if I come up here to edit, you know what? I wonder if it won't let me do that. Edit, I should be able to ungroup it, but I guess it's not going to let me ungroup it. So, let's try something else. Trying to figure out a way to, I guess we could save it. We could actually save it and then bring it in as just like a Jeff file, right? And then I could do whatever I wanted with this. Right now it's in letter form, right? But if I said, you know what, let's save this, save as design one, and we're going to go to the Jan file, or to Jeff. We're going to save it as a Jeff file. Okay. So now that's saved as a Jeff file. I'm going to close it out, and I'm going to open as a Jeff file. And there's my letter. Okay. Now it's not seen as a letter anymore. See, these aren't highlighted. So now I could just say, you know what, make this baby a motif. And then I can use that letter A, you know, anyway, like it's a motif, basically. Okay, let's go in here and find the motif. Oh, you know what? I did it again. Hold on. Haste makes waste, right? Okay, so letter A. Okay, and, you know, I would, of course, figure out where it started and ended. I'm figuring it all kind of starts and ends over here, right? But I'm going to do this so you can kind of see what happens if I don't control those. Okay, so now I made the letter A, and I made it at a really funny angle. So I'm going to go ahead and here's my line. And if I don't control the direction, and I, you know, or I make the direction odd, no, it looks like it just ignored that piece. Okay. See what happens? Hold on. If I need to group this. Yeah, we'll group that all together. Okay. When I brought it back in, it wasn't grouped, so I think it actually didn't save. Letter A. New, no. Okay. Yep, so let's make that at that angle like this. Okay, so now I've got the letter A created. Let me get rid of that line. What happens when I don't control, you know, or I make odd choices on where, you know, those in and out points are, or how I place those guidelines that I'm creating? What happens is this. Okay, there's my letter A. Okay. I can control the angle, but I'm going to go out of 3D view. I'm going to have jumps on this. See the jumps?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you have to be prepared for that. You either have to move that in or out point, or you just have to be prepared for this to happen. Okay, so that you know maybe those jumps aren't that big of a deal, but they'll be there. And the same thing, like when I go to use this as a gallery option, because of where I put, you know, see where those squares are? So here's my A, and see where that point is again? You know, it's not straight across like the other ones that I did, see? And as soon as I click that second one, see where that other point is, right? And see how things start getting placed oddly?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, as long as you know that, maybe this is what you want to happen, right? And, you know, if that's the case, then, you know, no problem. Take your little A here, and I'm going to zoom in. Okay, here's my in point, right? And I'm looking for, here's my out point. And it might not let me move that. I might have to ungroup it to move it. Okay. Anyway, move your in and out points. And I'm not sure why it's not letting me move this, because I've got edit ungroup. It should let me ungroup. There we go. Okay. Because what I've got is here's my underlay, and then it does this piece, right? Then it kind of comes back here, and it does this piece, and then there's this piece right here at the very bottom. This piece is important. It's called a lock stitch. You don't want to get rid of it. But that's the piece that I have to look for where my in and out points are, right? So if I look, there's my in and out point down there. If, you know, this would be difficult to move, I'd have to actually kind of, you know, think about recreating this. Or if I want to move like my in and out points up here, right, then getting rid of that piece is no big deal, because as soon as I move my in and out point, it's probably going to lock up some things, right? Or I can move that in and out point. See what I did? I moved it up here. I can move my in and out point there. And I can always come over here and say, you know what, I'm pretty sure I need a couple of lock stitches here, and just do a little quick boom, boom, boom. And that's your lock stitch, right? You've got it locked in the same place. Does that make sense what I'm trying to explain?
Could you go over the boom, boom, boom again?
Sure. Let me get rid of this piece right here. Okay, what I do is I deleted that original lock stitch that was down here. Okay. And I moved my out point up here.
Right.
Okay, now I went over to this little single run line.
Got
Make sure it
okay.
says single run. Don't do something like this. Make sure it says single run. And what I do is I wanted to place a lock stitch, so I placed a click, moved over just a little bit, another click, and then back. And that's enough to create a little knot there so your satin stitch won't unravel.
Okay.
Now when I make this motif, you know, I'm going to go and I'm going to select all, so I'm going to make sure I have a little pointy hand for select. I'm going to drag around this, make sure everything's selected. And now, you know, I see there's my out point. I know my in point's down here because we played earlier. And I'm going to say make motif, and we'll say letter A again. We'll save over top of it and say okay. And I'm going to put my first point down here and my second point up here. Okay, so now if I want to use the letter A as like a line, when I select this and select that motif, see how it's, you know, at an angle already? See how it lines up? Now, remember we had jump stitches, so I'm going to go out of the visualizer. You can see we don't have any jump stitches now. See how that lined up? So, you know, it's up to you. You can take the time to, you know, play with this, and yeah, you're going to make mistakes, but a letter is no big deal. You can always recreate a letter, right? Or you can play with something that you've made, but I want you to make your own motif and play with those in and out points. And, you know, and I'm going to explain the letter A to you again. Okay, what I did with the letter A is it was originally a letter. And because I couldn't turn the letter into a motif, I saved it as a JEF file. And I opened it back up in the program as the JEF file, because that converted it from a letter to just embroidery, right?
Mhm.
And over here, you know, when it came in, it was not grouped, so it kept missing this piece, okay? That little piece right there. So what I did was I selected it, and I grouped it originally. But if I'm going to make some editing, you may have to ungroup things sometimes. And it's the same thing. You would select them and say edit, group, or ungroup. Okay, once it's grouped, they're all those pieces kind of connect together here. If I want to edit, like I wanted to get rid of that piece, I would have to ungroup it to be able to just select this piece and delete it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, this is what it looks like when it's all grouped together. You'll see all those boxes highlighted blue, and it won't let you just pick one of them off. You can't do it. It's looking at it as an entity, one entity. So you have to go up to edit and ungroup. And once you ungroup, then you can come in here and just delete anything you want, or you can turn this to a different color. You know, you can do anything that you want to it then. So, you know, play with those and get comfortable with your menus and your controls. Worst case, you make an awful letter, big deal. You know, you're just playing. You know, you're just getting comfortable with the program, right? Mm-hmm. But I want you to get comfortable with the motifs, because what we're going to do is we're going to go on and we're going to create, you know, some borders and fills, and, you know, we'll play with that black work a little bit to make some, you know, interesting little black work designs. And then, you know, then we'll move on to creating, and we'll play with the automatic a little bit. You know, I showed you the automatic, I think, the first webinar, where it's like, oh, boom, here you go, here's the design. You know, we'll play with the automatic a little bit, and then, you know, we're going to play with the automatic and then the punching. So, you know, get comfortable with these tools. Find out what these do. You know, pop them out, and, you know, okay, worst case, you go like this, and you come up with something that, you know, you're never ever going to sew in a million years. Big deal, you know, but you know what it does now, right? And you know that if you, you know, select it and go into object details, you can kind of go through and see, you know, what it does. You know, 12.7 stitches per inch. Maybe you want it to be 10 stitches per inch. This is like a cross stitch count. So, you know, this is a cross stitch fill, right? You know, or you could just say 2 millimeters here. How many threads? 2 or 4, full cross or upright cross. You know, what do these things do? Floss direction this way or this way? Well, see the changes? Mm-hmm. And, you know, make little squares and stitch them out. See what it does. You know, just because it looks like this on the screen, I can promise you it's going to look a whole lot heavier when you stitch out, because I picked 4 threads, right? And I've now rotated this so it doesn't actually look like a cross stitch, because I made it an upright cross, right? So play with those settings, because what else is in, just for example, this setting is, you know, maybe I want to go to 8 stitches per inch. I want a full cross, my floss direction. This controls what gets stitched first. Like if you've ever done cross stitch, you know how you're supposed to do all of the stitches in one direction first, and then cross over at the same time in the same direction. That kind of controls how that does that, you know. So here's what it looks like. Now, this is what it's going to stitch like. Let me get rid of the little letter. And so that, you know, if you want to stitch this or faux stitch it, you have to go out of Visualizer. And then you can use this little slow redraw flower and see what it's doing. You know, it's putting the crosses. It's hard to see. I could probably really slow it down, but it's making sure that the crosses, that the same cross is made at the same time, like the same direction are made at the same time, if that makes sense. Okay. But, you know, stitch these out and see what happens, because just because it looks like this on the screen doesn't mean that's what it's going to look like when you stitch it out. Okay. So next week we're going to be all ready to make our borders, right? Mm-hmm. And Susan, you probably, these ladies know, like if we get behind, we kind of, or not next week, but in a couple of weeks, we kind of just keep rolling until we get through it.
Okay.
And, you know, so I say, well, we'll do this month. We may take 2 months to do it, and then in that case, I'll just add some extra time onto the webinars.
That's fine with me. Yep.
Okay. So, all right. So we're going to practice, and I will send you the link for the Facebook page or the group so you guys can join up. And if you're not on Facebook now, I'll send it to you in email because I think I think there's a specific link, but it'll be a private group, so only the Digitizer webinar folks will be in it. Nobody else can see anything that's posted there. It's just private.
Okay.
And
Barbara there tonight.
Barbara's mom passed away.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And well, I got a funny email. She actually hurt her back, which is why she's not here now. But her mom had passed away. She was dancing. She's 101 years old. Is how old her mom.
Oh my stars above!
And she was dancing the day before, and I guess she fell. And from there, it was just, you know, downhill. And so her mom had passed away. But it was funny for her to say, you know, she was dancing right up, you know, basically right up to the end. She was 101 years old, you know.
Lord have mercy.
Yeah, that's
way to go.
Yeah, that's what I said. Well, you know, I'm sorry to hear that, but you know, wow, what a state and what a person she must have really been like. You know, her outlook on life must have just been fantastic.
Well, you're gonna send us the link.
You will automatically get the link once I close the webinar, and I'm going to go ahead and stop recording so this becomes a little smaller.
I can download it tomorrow.
You should